Hello, I'm Hannah, and this is Hannah's Books. Today I want to fill you in on a few of the bookish places I went on the very first day of my recent trip to Boston. I hope I can get up both a June TBR and an introduction to some of the new books scheduled for publication in June very soon. But first, let's get straight to the travel. Some of you may remember that the last time I was in Boston, I stayed for a few nights at a centrally located bed and breakfast right near the public garden, the College Club. Starting more than a century ago, the College Club started as a space for educated and professional women, an alternative to the all-male clubs common at the time. Technically, the College Club is still a membership organization that hosts book groups and teas and the like. In fact, when I first arrived, there were about a dozen older women playing mahjong in one of the large public areas. But in addition to the social organization aspect, the College Club is a small bed and breakfast with roughly a dozen bedrooms, open to anyone who makes a reservation. Although I had plans to spend several nights at my son's apartment later in the week, I arranged to stay at the B&B for a few nights when he had especially heavy work hours planned. In general, Boston hotel prices are exorbitant, especially right downtown, but the College Club is relatively affordable, at least for Boston. And in addition to being conveniently located with the public garden just a few blocks away if you walk in one direction, and Newbury Street and the rest of the Back Bay if you go in the other, it seemed ideal. The College Club is on Commonwealth Avenue, which is quite wide, essentially one divided road with basically a block-wide, beautiful park running the whole length of the avenue. Next time I'm in town, I'll try to take pictures of it. Anyway, one of the reasons the College Club was relatively affordable for me is because they have several rooms specifically intended for single travelers, where two single guests share a bathroom down the hall. The rooms don't have central air, although once it gets hot during the summer, they are very nicely cooled with window units, as I learned on my last visit. That's all fine for me. And the rooms are really charming too. This time I got to peek in a few of the double rooms while the staff prepared for new guests, and they are stunning. The singles are lovely, but a little simpler, and they are all different. Last time I stayed in a room named after Tufts University, and it was decorated to nod to some of the decor and traditions of that school. This time I was in a different room, named after another Boston college, Emmanuel. Let me give you a little tour. The room holds what is possibly a full-size bed rather than a single, and there is a lovely little side table with a nice lamp where I kept the book I was reading about Alice James, which I will talk about more another time, as well as my little pocket notebook, which I really ought to talk through in some future video too. Above the bed was a collection of art, including some lovely floral pieces, as well as a watercolor of a nearby church that's apparently similar to the buildings at Emmanuel. On the other side of the bed is a floor lamp and a wonderful little writing desk, which I put to use several times when I was taking notes on my reading, which I keep in notebooks like this one. On the opposite side of the room, there is a comfortable reading chair, a large mirror that reflected sunlight coming in the window during the day and lamplight in the evenings, as well as a little more floral artwork. While there is a large window between the desk and reading chair, it looks out over Back Alley. Last time in the Tufts room, I looked out over the beautiful Commonwealth Avenue, which is both prettier and a little quieter, but this was fine. I mentioned that every two singles share a bathroom, and each of the single bedrooms has a connecting door between it and one of the big fancy doubles, so people who want a suite can put one together by unlocking the connecting door. My flight arrived in Boston right around noon, and I was thrilled that my room was already ready for me as soon as I arrived. I took my bag up, plugged in my phone to recharge, and stretched out on the bed for a very brief little nap. Then I walked over a block to Newberry Street and started my way down. As the woman at the front desk explained, all the shops at the top of Newberry are super expensive brand name stores and fancy restaurants. But as you walk down, you get more and more funky, interesting little places. I was on my way to some bookstores several blocks away. I did enjoy poking around in a tiny little shop selling beautiful journals and the like on my way, but I didn't take any pictures. The first bookstore I came to was Posman. It looks tiny from the outside, and while it is relatively small, it's at least a bit of a TARDIS, bigger on the inside than you would have expected. The shelves have pretty typical choices for a mainstream bookstore, but the books laid out on the central tables are quite eye-catching. Lots of classics with sort of hip, trendy covers. They aren't necessarily editions that I would go and search up, but I can imagine that they might be especially appealing to many readers. Another interesting area was this little shelf where books are hidden behind brown paper wrapping. They're sold as blind date with a book. Of course, Postman isn't the only bookstore to do that particular kind of marketing. In fact, as I continued down to the next bookstore, I saw the same idea, although I don't think I took a picture. That next bookstore is Trident, a store I visited regularly back in the late 1980s when I was young and living in Boston for a few years. Yes, it has been around for a few years, just as I have. I love the outdoor tables here. Actually, there is outdoor seating at almost all of the restaurants, too, small and large, along Newberry Street, and everywhere seemed full on that beautiful afternoon. As a nonfiction lover, I'm always happy to see nonfiction on the very first display when you enter a shop. But in general, all the books in the front part of the store were fairly standard new releases. Once I got into the main fiction section near the back of the first floor, I was thrilled to see that Trident Books keeps a large number of editions of many classic works. Alcott, Austen, the Brontes, all mixed in alphabetical order with contemporary fiction. I thought of all the Joyce heads as I got to this shelf. And there's a shelf for you whaleys, too. This tiny little Huck Finn, a novel I just recently reread, caught my attention, as did the trendy wolves that I had seen over at Postman on my way down, too. I'm not one who collects beautiful editions of books in general, but there certainly were some tempting ones at Trident. There's a wonderful biography section, too. A bit of Hannah Arendt, who I've been poring over a bit this past week for an essay I'm trying to write. There are also a lot of magazines, including a lot of mainstream titles, as well as some interesting independent zines. And then the bookish stairs going up to the second floor. For anyone planning to meet up with a guy obsessed with books about World War II when you're both in Boston, you might be able to find something on these shelves. I'll mention that get-together very briefly in a future video. And there are older classics and tons of nature books, most of which I did not catch on film. A little tiny book of Keats made me think about Helene Hamp in search of a book of romantic poetry to stick in the pocket of her trousers on a walk to Central Park. The last photo I had from Trident is of these big doors leading, I suppose, into a backroom storage area or something like that. If you look quickly, they appear to be shelves, but all the books sticking out are cut off at the depth of just a couple of inches. It was a bit disconcerting, actually, and I have continued to have nightmares about it. Well, I then treated myself to a cool drink in the sweet little upstairs cafe. And as I drank my Arnold Palmer, a mix of iced tea and lemonade, I eavesdropped on the boisterous table of students next to me, a group of seniors from a variety of local colleges, all nearing graduation, and chatting about summer plans and future dreams. I remember those moments so well from when I was their age, spending time in this same bookstore even. Lovely memories. After the bookstores, I began my walk to Trader Joe's, a small grocery store between the bookstores and my B&B, to pick up some things to make an easy dinner I could share with a local friend who was planning to stop by for a visit. And as I walked, I ran across a few other folks enjoying their own dinner of pizza. Well, that will do it for today, but there is a lot more to come. Boston has a lot of bookstores, and I visited quite a number of them and will take you on a tour. But for now, thanks for joining me here on Hannah's Books. See you soon.